Hi guys, my name is Tony. This is Jay. We're going to be putting together today a Backyard Buddy Wide Buddy. So I know you're excited. You're taking delivery of your lift. We're hoping to help you understand how easy it is to put this together. We'll hope to save you some tips, to show you some tips on putting it together that'll help you put this lift together. Now the first thing that you want to know is a little bit of site preparation. When you're putting this into your garage, you want to find where the power unit port is, because that's where the power unit's going to be. And that's going to be on two different positions. So if I'm driving in here, parking my car on it, it's going to be on the driver's side front post, or it's going to be on the passenger side rear post. Today we've chose to put it on the driver's side front. So with that in place, the way you know that is because inside you've cut this cardboard open and you'll see there is a hydraulic port that's coming out. That means the power unit post is going to be right here. So in position this in your garage, there is a lock rod that we're going to be putting in at a later time, and I'll reference that a little bit later. But I need 5 foot of space between the front wall and the lift when building it. And then in the back, we need to have 12 foot of space between the lift and the wall. Or if it's up back by the garage door, all you're going to do is open the garage door, step out, and then insert it in, and then close your door again. All right, so that's kind of important to know that before you start disassembling this and getting the lift put together. This will be helpful to have a tool list of the tools that you're going to need to have to assemble this lift. So you want to have a set of box end wrenches, starting at 5/16 all the way to 3/4 inch. You'll also want a standard set of Allen wrenches. You're going to want vice grip, pair of pliers. It's good to have an adjustable wrench, 1/2 inch drive, 1 1/16, and a 3/4 inch socket with a 1/2 inch drive ratchet. If you like to use impacts, you can use an electric impact or an air impact. 1/4 inch nut driver, a set of snap ring pliers, an alignment tool to help you align your tracks, strap cutters, box opener, tape measure. You're going to need a grease gun to be able to grease all your grease zerks, some thread tape or sealant. A couple of straps would be handy when you're using your engine hoist to help you lift the tracks up. You're going to need some wax, either paste wax or spray on detail wax to wax up your post, some lubricant, and a nice funnel to pour in your hydraulic oil. This should help you make it an ease to put this lift together. So right now we're going to go ahead and take the packaging off, start laying parts out, and we'll show you how this goes together. We're going to take out our cross arms. So we're going to pick them up out of here first. And there is a right and a left. You can see that the handle is attached to the lock. So that tells me that's the one that's got to be positioned by the power unit. So we're going to move this over. We determined that our power unit is on the driver's side front post. So that's where we're going to set this one to be able to get it engaged. The next one will be the rear post. Makes it easy to determine right and left post. So once again, we'll come over here. We have to remove the top caps first, and then you're able to pull that right out. Okay, so you ready? Go up, turn. Just like so. And now we're going to remove the legs from the packaging. I want you to notice once again in our packaging, we've taken cardboard and wrapped these base plates so they don't get all scratched up again in shipping. So it's just a little bit more of the care that we're taking in when we package these lifts. Now I want you to notice we've unloaded the 2 posts at this end of the lift. They are the post that's going to go on this end of the lift. So you don't have to worry about, do I have the right post in the right spot? Because I want you to see on this post, I'll turn this around so you can see that, you'll see that there are lock cutouts on the side of the post. So I want to make sure when I position this that I'm positioning this on the inside like this. My locks are on the outside, facing the outside of the lift. When I come over to the other side of the lift, it's a left-hand post. So now I'm looking at it and it's on the left, being on the outer part of the lift. So when we put our cross arms on, the locks will engage into these slots. Okay, now we're down to the post that's got our power unit bracket on it. And so the way you can tell that's because it has the bracket itself at the very bottom of the lift. Got it? You'll notice an extra part welded to this post on the base plate. This is going to be the bracket that we're going to attach the power unit at a little later time. But again, you're going to notice my locks are on the outside of the lift. My locks on this post, again, are on the outside of the lift. Important to get that set up as we get going here. Okay, inside your parts box, that is, everything's been packed in there that you're going to need. Here's a packing list so that you can make sure that you received everything, and we've checked it off, and you'll see it was checked off and packed by a certain name that assigned it and the date that they put it in there to make sure of the accuracy that you're getting everything that you're supposed to be getting. Here's a manual with a parts list. Your lights that you're going to get with this set, your sliders, pulley covers, and then we have our bolt kit. This is going to be for our heims, our locks, and our springs. Everything's packed in nice little packages, so it makes it easy for when you come to assemble. We're now getting ready to assemble our cross arms onto the post. And we're using a wide body that we're building here today. So what I want to do is take a measurement of inside of bucket to inside of bucket. On this one, we're just right at 108 inches wide. So what I want to do is when I set up my post here on the bottom, I want to make sure that I'm 108 inches between the inside of my post, which that one's right on 108. At the back here, we're setting right at 108. That'll just make it a lot easier when you see us move this cross arm and put it onto the post. Now you'll see that I've positioned the locks are closest to the floor. They're both the same way. So we're going to put on the cross arm to match that so our locks match. In order to put on our crossbar on the end here, we have to elevate the post off of the floor. Inside the packing of the lift, you're going to get a couple of 2x4s. Just set it on there. That'll raise that up so that we can put on our crossbeam. As you're seeing Jay, he's putting on some wax on these posts. That makes a big difference. A lot of people will try to lubricate this with some kind of a WD or silicone spray, and then guess what? Dirt sticks to it. And then it gets goopy inside the sliders. The best way to do it is just use wax. You can use a paste wax like Jay is using, or you can just get that spray-on detail wax and wax that probably once a quarter about the time you wax your cars, and that'll give it that real slick feeling like you get after you've waxed your car, and it allows them sliders just to slide easily up and down, and it'll keep it from scratching the outside of your post, and it moves really easy. to do is you want to be really careful here to start, because we don't want to scratch up our post when we're putting this in. Okay, then what we're going to do is put in a couple of sliders at a diagonal distance so that we don't scratch it as we go down the post. You have locks here that you want to make sure are not engaged into the post, so that it'll allow this to slide down. So we're holding this lock open here. That's going to keep it open, and this one keeps it open. So now we're able to slide this down. We're going to slide it to our 2x4, and then we're going to reposition our 2x4 as we go down the post. And you want to kind of go together. Okay, you ready? By inserting the sliders in there, we're going to take this down and set it on the third lock from the bottom. You're in, and then this one is free. This is your secondary lock. We want it to be free so it's not setting on it. And then it's setting on the main lock, and we'll show that when we stand the post up here. Pick this up with your legs, then we're going to stand this right up. Now, I want to show you these locks here a little closer so that you understand what we did there. This is our main lock, and it's what the carriage is setting on inside the lock at this point. This is the secondary lock. So when we were inserting this in, we held this back and we had this lock turned around holding it open so that we was able to slide that in and the lock's not catch. When we got to the third lock, then we inserted that one in, and you can tell this is not in its lock. This is the secondary lock that we'll talk about here shortly. If you rent a material handling lift to help you do this job, which is the preferred way for me to do this, it makes it a whole lot easier to be able to, you'll see how we install that cross arm by using the material handling lift. Okay, by using this material handling lift, you're going to be able to put the cross arm on here, and then we're going to raise it up and insert it from the top and then lower it down to our third lock from the bottom. So this doesn't move around on you. We want to take a clamp, and we're going to clamp that so that it doesn't move on you. Okay, ready to come down? You'll notice now that we'll just lower this down right over the posts themselves. Before you want to bring this down, you got to make sure that your locks are open. You'll see the main lock is pointing down and the secondary lock is not engaged into the post. If they were engaged, it wouldn't allow that outside slider to come down the post. So you got to make sure that they're open before you come down. Are we in, Jay? Okay, now that we're in, we're going to come down. The genie keeps the cross arm nice and level so it doesn't scratch up the cross arm as it comes down. And we're going to put this on the third lock. The third lock again. Okay, now we're going to insert our sliders. So you'll notice one of them, we have 3 angle sliders and one that's got a notch in it. And there is a left and a right. So we want to be able to put it up to the post. When I put it on there, I have the solid piece at the top, and then the two cutouts are for my locks. That's for the secondary lock and the main lock. So we're going to put it in first, put it into the post here, get that one set in, and then we're going to go straight across from it on the side, put that one in, and then we'll come to the back and put these two in the back. You might have to jiggle the post a little bit just to get it to fit, but then they'll go right in, and it's a nice tight fit, a little bit of tolerance in there when we put these sliders in. But what that does for you is you don't get a lot of the wiggle wobble that you get on some of the 4-post lifts that are out on the market. This is a tight fit, eliminating that movement. Okay, now as you see, we have our H formed on this side and on that side. Our lift is in the middle. So our next project is going to be removing the package bolts from here, and then we're going to use that genie to put under here, raise the track up, set it on the lip of this cross arm, and put in our bolts. Very simple to do. Now we've taken off the package bolts at the end of the crate. Now we're ready to lift this up. Again, I'm using the material handle lift to raise that track, but you might be using an engine hoist. If you're using an engine hoist like that there, then you're going to want to use a strap. And the strap would go around the track like so, and then hook your engine hoist to it and pick it up with the engine hoist. What we're doing now is just setting the lip on top of the cross arm. Are we good there? What we're going to start with first, we have 3 bags of bolts. We want to start with kit 1. Kit 1 is going to be a lot of our runway bolts. So we're going to use these bolts here, these 1/2-inch bolts, that's going to attach the cross arm to the track. I wanted to give you a shot of how this is going to work. This is called our ramp clip. It's going to be inserted on the outside here, but I want to show you how this bolt's going to work. We have a 1/2-inch bolt, and then this is going to go up against the inside of the runway. Then you're going to have a flat washer that's going to be on the outside of the cross arm, the thin nut for spacing, then you're going to have the lock washer and the nut on the outside. And insert the bolt into its space there. At this point, you see we've put in the 1/2-inch bolt, we have a flat washer, and then we have the skinny nut. Now at this time, I don't want to tighten this up on either one. We're just putting it on here, and we're going to do the other side. We want to leave this loose so when we put the bottom track up here, we have room for it to fit between. And then we'll come back and put on the ramp clips and tighten all this up. Put your, all the packing bolts that Jay is undoing can be discarded. You don't need to keep it and reuse it for anything. Okay, we clear? Yeah. Oh, we got to tilt it a little bit more. Come on. Yeah, we're good here.
To help align the holes up for your bolts, instead of pushing back and forth and trying to get lucky, just get yourself an awl. Put it in, we'll go around, that lines everything up. Everything should be good.
All right, now we're ready to put on our ramp clip on the end of this track. So first thing we're going to do is start with our bolts. We're going to put them through like so. Then you're going to have a flat washer. Then you've got your skinny nut for spacing. And then you want to use a 3/4 inch. You can either use a ratchet and a socket. We happen to have a ratchet box end. So now we're going to go ahead and tighten this down. And then you're going to put on your ramp clip, lock washer, and your nut. And that gives you your ramp clip, then will fit on the outside. We'll tighten this up on both ends, get this all ready to go. There we go. Ramp clip, lock, and the thicker nuts. Just like so. When this end's done, we'll go and do the same thing to the other side.
Okay, now we're at the point where we can put our bearing retainer clips in. This simple clip held on with a 1/4-inch cap screw, tightened with a 7/16 wrench, is what keeps the slider blocks from coming out the top of your beam. Each post will have 2 of them, 1 on each side, and that retains all 4. The bottom, the retainer, is welded in to the carriage. This is just a 1/4-inch cap screw, so a good snug fit is all you need.
So now what we're doing is we're just cutting the zip ties that are holding the cables together. Okay, once you've cut all the zip ties off of the cables, they're just going to kind of flop in space of where they need to be. You got this one dropped off here, that one's dropped on that side. Over here you've got them dropped at both ends. So now what you're going to do is just route this around your sheave, come up, and then set it over the top so that you have this in place just like that. And you'll do that to all 4 corners so your cables are ready to go. Okay, now we're going to install our secondary lock pulley lever. So this is your secondary lock here. You're going to see we're going to put the bolt through there. We have a jam nut that goes on the outside of it. That's going to jam up. That's going to be a 9/16. I'm going to tighten that up to it. Just like so. This sits here, and then we got to insert a couple of springs so that it has the kickback on it. And so take the spring, put it on there just like this. After you got the springs installed, what that does is now, see, that's holding this lock open. But when our cable gets here and the cable gets tight, then this is going to open up that lock, so now it's free. So if you ever had a cable failure, then the cable gets loose, that flies back, and that secondary lock would then go into the cutout and keep this from dropping to the floor. These are our top caps. They're going to fit on top of the post, and then this is what the cable is going to run through, and then this is where all your pulling power is. Look at the size of this base. This is a 5/8" top plate. Now you'll notice this is a 3.5" square tube that's going to insert into the top of our post, and it'll be easy. The nice thing about this, there is no left or right, so it doesn't matter which one you put in. You just got to make sure that the cable hole goes directly with the pulley cable as it goes up to the top cap. It's got to be in line.
Okay, as previously mentioned, all our top caps are identical, so you can't really put the wrong top cap on the wrong post, but you can put it on wrong. So what we're going to show you now is that when the top cap is inserted, the hole for your cable goes directly down to the sheave on this side of the post. So when you bring your cable up through, and if you were to hold tension on it, the cable would be parallel with the post. If this is turned in any other direction, it will not be parallel, and you could damage your lift when you run it. And I'm going to put the lock nut on, and because I don't have a hex wrench to fit this, I'm going to use a pair of vice grips to hold the stud. Now you never want to hold it in the thread. You want to hold it down where it's crimped. And we're going to turn it in just until our nylock is flush with the stud. That's where we're going to start our adjustment from when we do our final adjustment. And we'll do this. This will be typical of all four corners. Okay, there we're flush nutted. Okay, again, we're going to set our cap in the proper direction in alignment with our sheave.
Now we're at the part where we're going to install our long lock rod that has the T-bar on it. And what you're going to do, we're at the end where we'll raise the garage door up, because this is a 12-foot long piece of pipe, square tubing. And you're going to insert this right in through this hole here. And then my helper Jay is going to line it. There are some tubes inside, guide tubes, that holds this in place. And he's lining them up as we push this through. Just like so. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install our side-to-side lock rod. And so what we want to do is, you're going to see there's a washer welded onto this rod. When you put this in, you want to be on this side of the eye bolt, because you think about it, when this pulls to open up the lock, we're going to have a spring attached to this washer and to this eye bolt. So what we want to do is, when this pulls, the spring makes it positive lock going back. So you want this to be on the left-hand side of our eye bolt. So it goes through like this. And then we're going to set our heims. So come down to this end over here. So what we're going to do is take our heim in. Look how heavy duty this is built. It's got a swivel on it. We're going to thread this onto the end of this rod. We're not going to tighten up the jam bolt yet. We're going to go ahead and put this in. And I need a nut, please. And then we'll put a nut on the back side of it. Now we've got that side tightened up. Now we're ready to put in our linkage on this end. So we have our heim. We're going to thread it on to our lock rod. Get this threaded on there. What we're going to do is set this T-bar to where it's pointing at about 1 o'clock, somewhere right in there. It's going to be a 1 o'clock time frame. I can back this up a little bit to give us a little bit more. Just like so. And then you're going to have a lock washer you put on the back side because this T-bar is a little thinner, and then we're going to have our nut that we put on the back side. And bring that up to it, just like so. And then what we've got to do is we're going to put on our linkage rod to go from the lock to the other side of the T-bar. So it's going to be this long rod, threaded rod. You're going to put on your jam nut first, put you on one of the heims. Then on the other side, put the jam nut in. And then put on the heim. And then you'll adjust this. This is going to go through the lock, the main lock, and then it's going to go here. So we're going to adjust this in so that it fits that length. Just like so. One more turn. Now it fits perfect. Again, we're going to use the lock washer, nut. And then over here, we put the heim through, and what we're going to do, since it's a thick plate, all we're doing is putting the nut on this side, like we did on the other. At this point, we'll use a 9/16, and we'll tighten up all of our linkage to the rod, 1/2 inch here, 9/16 here, lock these in place. And we're all locked, linkage rods are linked. We'll tighten up our jam nuts here real quick, and we are good to go on this end. And we'll go to the other side and do the same. Okay, so now what we want to do is we have our washer. We got to insert the spring here and tie it to our eyelet. This will get it so we have kickback. When we open up our locks, that'll kick the locks back into the groove. That gives us our spring action.
Okay, what I have in my hand is a collar that you'll see it fits into this 5-foot rod that Tony's holding, but it also engages in our 12-foot rod. And once we have our rods in place, this collar gets lock nutted to both the rods, and that's what ties the front to the back. Simple, very secure, very tight application, very functional.
So what we're going to do is insert the rod through. Jay's lining it up with the tubes underneath the runways.
Okay,
I'm setting mine
back towards you a little bit. Okay.
I'm making sure that my T-bar is at 11 o'clock. When Jay puts that in down there, that's important that this is set at 11 o'clock at this time.
Okay, and I'm going to tighten the collar with a 7/16 wrench. And now Tony held this end to align with our front of the lift. So now our front and rear are in time. That's one thing nice about the square rod. It times you perfectly, front to back, as long as you assemble it correctly. And that should be it.
Now we're going to repeat what we did on the opposite side of the lift, which is going to be inserting our long lock rod from side to side, making sure that my washer is on this side. So again, when I open up the lock, it pulls this way, which gives me the spring action that I need to have done. One thing I want to make sure I mention is that the long part of this rod is going to go on the top hole. So now we have this already set at the 11 o'clock, so all I have to do is adjust this heim to where it goes straight in. And when we do that, we're going to put a lock washer and a nut. Then, like we did on the other one, we want to insert our 2 heims. We got to put on the 2 jam nuts, and then we put on our heims on the end of it. And then what we got to do is adjust this to the length that we need to match our holes in the locks. So this one can be a little longer. just like so. And we are jammed. Everything is jammed, the locks are installed. We need to put on our spring. For our locks. Now guys, I don't want you to be confused because we pack these as universal. You're going to see on the wide buddy we have to have a longer rod to be able, because it's a wider lift. But on our classic 7,000 pound lift, it's a shorter distance. So instead of this rod, we'd be using this one to put our lock to our T-bar. So just don't be confused. It's not, you don't need a place to look for this. It's just that we universally pack both of them in the kit. We've got the pulley cover on. There is a right and a left, so you got to make sure you get the right one in, and you got to make sure that this cable is on the back side of your pulley. So when it gets tight, it pulls that secondary lock open. Now you're going to line up your holes. We have some little self-tapping screws that you're going to put in the pre-drilled holes, and then go ahead and screw them into place. We have a pre-drilled hole on the cover, and then inside on the bracket there is a hole. So all you got to do is line them up and then put in your caps. And then tighten them all up. If you'd prefer, you can have you a drill with a 1/4 inch bit on the end of it, because these are self-tapping, and use that and it'll work a little easier getting them lined up. But then you've got your pulley cover attached, your pulley's on the outside of the cable's on the outside of the pulley, you're ready to go. We're going to repeat the same process on all the other 3 posts. At this point, we're getting ready to hook up our hydraulic hose to our fitting that's coming out of the track itself. So the first thing we need is we need to get a little bit of thread sealant that we're going to put on this pipe thread at the bottom. And we're going to just run it around this outside. Just like so. We're going to put on our fitting here, pipe thread on pipe thread. Tighten that down, and now we're getting ready to assemble the power unit onto the Backyard Buddy power unit bracket. What you're going to need is a 4 5/16 bolts with their nuts. There's 8 flat washers and 4 lock washers that will assemble this to hold this onto this bracket. And this is kind of neat that this bracket's off to the side, not sitting on the outside making the unit wider. It's inside, so you'll be able to not take up more space in your shop. This is a 110 volt power unit, 20 amp breaker, and it's ETL approved. So I'm going to hold this up, and Jay's going to run the bolts through there so that we can get this mounted. You'll notice we're putting it into the slots, the top slots of the power unit. He'll get one started, then I won't have to hold it much, just for alignment.
A little bit.
Okay, and we'll need a 1/2 inch wrench. you'll notice this is a nice heavy 110 cord. You know, you can plug this straight into an outlet if you have one there close. It's 6 foot in length, so it makes it easy if you've got a receptacle in the ceiling that you can reach to to the ceiling or to a side wall. If you need to run an extension cord with this, make sure you're using a 12 gauge or heavier cord. You don't want to use a 14 or 16 gauge cord because you'll lose too much amperage going to the motor.
Okay, now that we have our power unit mounted, our nuts and bolts tightened, we're going to add our oil. We use premium 32 weight straight hydraulic oil. We use that weight so it doesn't slow the lift down in a cold climate. Here in Ohio, if this was in a cold garage, if we used a heavier oil, the customer would notice how much slower the lift would go down than with the 32. Now, if you live in a southern climate, Texas, any place where you have usually hotter summers and warmer winters, then you can go to a 46 weight oil and it would work very well for you. It's probably gonna take about 3.5 gallons of oil to fill up our reservoir. I always put the spout on the top of the 5-gallon bucket. That way you don't get air bubbles coming out, splashing and making a mess. You get a nice steady flow. Okay, now I'm going to take a look. It's hard to see, but right here where my finger at, there's a mark, and that's your minimum. Then if I move my finger up, again, it's a mark that's hard to see, but that's the full maximum level. So if you notice, we're right between them two. So this is a good place to stop. We'll have plenty of oil to run this lift.
All right, now we're going to install the hoses that are needed, or hydraulic hoses, to our power unit so we can get this lift up and running. Now you're going to notice when you undid your package that there was a box that looked like this here, that it has all of these pieces in. This is your breather tube installation. So everything that's we're going to be working with was packed inside of this box inside there, so you don't have any missing parts. So the first thing we want to do is, you'll find on the side of this aluminum housing pump, there is a red cap. You're going to pull this cap out. That is the port for the hydraulic hose to hook to. Then we've got a 90-degree fitting. This is what's called an O-ring fitting. You're going to see there's an O-ring right here, and it has a jam nut. So we're going to screw this into the housing and then just tighten this up, and it's going to seat that O-ring to the aluminum housing. So we'll show you how that's done here. So a little bit of oil on that O-ring. We're going to turn this in there. And what I'm doing, I'm getting several threads all the way till I'm up to that O-ring. You'll feel it when it touches it. Now I don't want to keep turning it because it'll tear that O-ring. And then you're going to take your wrench and you're going to tighten this up. I'm tightening up an aluminum housing here. So I don't want to overdo it. Just like that, to where now it's tight. This is sitting here, and now we're going to hook up our hose to it. Now we've got this all installed on our 90-degree, and we've snugged up that fitting O-ring. Now what we're going to do is attach the hose. Again, we have two different ends of this hose. I have one that has an O-ring on it as well. That's the one that's going to go to this 90-degree fitting here. The other one is a flare fitting, and that's going to go to the runway over here that we've already put our fitting on. So this one you have to do first. And so what we're going to do is we're going to thread this in, and you're actually just going to turn the hose to get it started. And you'll turn this in. Again, you're just seating that O-ring, getting it up to there, and then you're going to take this and snug this tight. Just like that. Now we have, to our power unit, we're all set, solid, and now we can come up here and connect the other end to our swivel that we just installed just a few minutes ago. And this is a flare fitting. So we're going to take this, this is going to connect us to our cylinder underneath the runway. So now we get this in. And you might need to, every once in a while, kind of loosen this up, twist your hose, get it set the way you want it. so you can get the turns out of it, and then tighten it up. Now we're getting ready to install the breather tube. So what we have is a return line on our power unit, on this housing on the pump. So what we want to do is take a number 8 Allen wrench, put that in, and you're going to take this out. So we're not going to use this anymore. So that's just a plug. And what we're going to put inside of it is we have a 1/4 inch push tube lock, and we've got threads that's going to match the threads here, and we've already put some thread tape on there as well, so it seals up nicely. So we're going to put this on. Just like so. And then when this is done, this will still rotate, because we're going to put, now we're going to insert our 1/4 inch vent line, and then we're going to connect this to the cylinder, the vent side. So all I did is push that in, and then that locks inside. It's going to follow the hydraulic hose. You see this hole that's drilled into the runway. We're going to insert this tube into that hole, and then my helper Jay on the other side is going to feed that through, and then he's going to connect it to underneath on the vent side of the cylinder.
Okay, now that we've connected our vent line to the power unit, we need to connect it to the rear of our cylinder, where the air would vent in and out of the cylinder. We remove the red plug from the back of the cylinder, and now we have another fitting, just like the one that was connected to the power unit. It's just a smaller thread. It's 1/4 inch national pipe thread instead of 3/8. And it's pre-taped, so you don't need to worry about, because there's no pressure in this line. This is just air traveling in and out of the back of the cylinder as the lift's being operated. So I'm going to tighten out with a 9/16 wrench, snug. Again, I don't have to go over tight on this. Okay, now we finished tightening this. Now we're going to connect the line that we brought from our power unit, our push to lock 1/4 inch line, and just push it straight in. Slight effort, it pushes in, and it locks automatically, and it'll stay there. Now we're going to route our hose neatly. Their zip ties will come with the unit. So we're going to tuck it up underneath here. We're going to follow our hydraulic line out. And once we get it zip tied, then there's a covering that'll cover the whole assembly and make a nice clean look. Okay, now we're going to go outside the runway and finish. Looks good.
One more thing we want to do is we want to make sure we grease every one of our grease zerks. On all 4 corners, we have a pulley. So each axle has a grease zerk on it. So you're going to want to put the grease gun to it and pump it till you get grease inside there. And now you don't have to worry about that bushing being dry. You've got grease on it. It's going to make this pulley last a long time for you. And you're going to notice I have on each 4 of the posts there's one. And then underneath the track that has the cylinder on it, there's pulleys there. So each axle has a grease zerk. So now we're going to go down below, and I'm going to show you how you handle that one. You're going to need a 1/8 Allen wrench. And right here at the axle again, we have a plug. So you're going to take the Allen wrench first, take this plug out, and then in our package, we send you 1 grease zerk. So now what you're going to do is you're going to insert this in place. You don't have to tighten it up very tight because you're just temporarily putting it in there. And then what you're going to do is shoot some grease in that, a couple pumps till you feel that it's good. Pull that out. What you're going to do is now take this back out. And insert the plug again. Take your Allen wrench, put this in place, and what that's going to do is now there's nothing that's hanging down below the track, so you won't be scraping your head, or if you have a low clearance putting your car in here, that will not be affecting the clearance of the lift. You'll want to do that on each one. You have another one here, and then at the other end of the track, you have two axles where your pulleys are at. You'll do it at that one as well. Okay, and you'll want to do that depending on your use, but I'd say every 6 months, check it. You'll be able to tell when you put your grease gun in and start to pump it. If it feels full, you're good. You don't want grease pushing out around the bushing, so I'd check it every 6 months and you'll be fine. Okay, now the time has come. You are ready to power this unit up. We've got oil in the system, we've plugged it into a 110 outlet, and what we want to do is get the air out of the system. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to push the power button. You're going to hear the motor running. That's going to pull. Right now it's taking the oil out of the reservoir and filling up the cylinder. Now just be patient, don't worry that nothing's moving, because what it's doing is it's got to fill up that big cylinder underneath that runway before it's going to have any movement on them cables. So you'll run this for 15-20 seconds before you see any movement. And as you see, that cylinder's starting to come in, and that's going to tighten up those cables. Once it gets tight, then it will start to pick the deck up off of the locks. Now, right before it gets tight, you want to make one quick check around the lift to make sure that all the cables are attached to the pulleys. I just want to physically check to make sure that each cable is around the pulley sheave. Underneath as well, making sure the cables are on there. I want to check each one. We have a secondary lock and around the pulley, and then around each bottom of the pulleys. Around the secondary lock and the pulley. And we are good to go. So now I'll continue filling this up. Next thing you're going to see, it's going to get tight. It's going to raise the lift off of the locks. And then we're going to let it down to bleed the air out of the system. And here it comes. And we have liftoff. Once we come up enough, now I can disengage my locks. You'll see on that end that the locks are coming completely open on all four. I want to be able to see the tips of the locks, so I know that all four are disengaged. And now I'm ready to lower the lift. This is going to take it down to where I can get the air out of the system. The very first time coming down, you're bleeding the system. You shouldn't have to worry about it anymore. Once I get past the last cutout for the locks on the post, then I don't need to hold my lock bar anymore. You're also going to notice, being an outside slider, the first time down, it's going to adjust the post for you. They're self-aligning. You won't have to worry about making sure the posts are in the right place, because being an outside slider, it's going to align it as it comes down. There's the air. You can hear it right there at the last. Just hold that down for about 5 seconds later just to make sure all the air is out. And now we're ready to adjust the lift. So we're wanting to come back up. We're going to use the top of the slider as a gauge to do our adjustments. What we're going to do here first is just set the adjustment as a preset, because your final adjustment wants to be when the car is loaded onto the lift. Because when you put the weight that you're going to have on here, these are twisted cables. It's going to make it grow. So you want to adjust that at the time when it's loaded with the car on there to get your final adjustment. But we're going to set it up here first just to get it close before you load your car. with this, what we're doing is this slide bucket is coming up. And so when this is my highest one, I've walked around and looked, this is going to be the first one to where this comes flush with the bottom part of this lock cutout. So right now I'm flush. That's going to be my gauge. I'm going to walk to all 3 posts and see what I need to adjust them to make them flush just like this. And it'll be easy to adjust the other 3 to this one right here. So let's walk over to this other post. You'll notice this one is flush as well. So these 2 are setting the same level, and so now we're going to go check on the back to see what we need to adjust on the back. Okay, now you can see right here that we're a 1/2 inch lower from being flush. So what that tells me is I need to adjust this nut at the top a 1/2 inch, pull that up to where this becomes flush, so that the lock will fire the same as the other 2 on the other side of the lift. We got one more, so I'm making a mental note. I need to raise this a 1/2 inch. Let's check the last post. And this one as well. We need to come up a finger width, about a 1/2 inch, that we need to raise this one so it becomes flush as well. So what we're going to do to get this preset ready to load your car on it, I'm going to raise up, tighten that nut at the top of the cable by a 1/2 inch. That'll bring these up to flush. Then we'll load the car on there, and then we're going to check it again, because then the cables will be fully twisted tight, and then you'll be able to set the adjustment and dial it in. A little helpful hint for you. I'm a 1/2 inch and I'm a 1/2 inch on these 2 posts that I need to bring it up. Now if I get up on top right now and adjust that with the weight of the lift, I'm having to raise the lift up. So an easy way to do it is I'm going to bring it up to a lock, let it engage, and then set it down onto the lock. That'll take all the pressure off the cables. So now when I go up there, I'm going to take a pair of vice grips and my appropriate socket and tighten that up without having to raise the lift up. It makes it a whole lot easier to adjust.
Okay, now that we're on a lock, there's some slack in the cable. So now, as we pre-measured, we need to come up a 1/2 inch on both the rear posts. So I'm just going to clamp the non-threaded portion of our stud, and you definitely don't want to clamp the cable at any time. And I'm going to use a hand wrench because I can control it better. And I'm going to go up until I see about a 1/2 inch of threads sticking out of the top of my nut, because if you remember, we flush nutted to begin with, so we had a reference point to start from. That looks like a 1/2 inch there. Now I'll do the other rear one. Okay, now I'm at the other rear post, and again, we start out flush nutted, and we have to bring this one up a 1/2 inch also. And this is our preliminary leveling. We're going to do our final leveling with a car on it. So I'm not even putting a tape measure on, I'm just getting close. Okay, there we're about a 1/2 inch up.
Okay, so we've made our adjustments on the lift here before we load the car, but what I want to show you is what we're looking for. You know, this sets on your garage floor. Your garage floor might be perfectly level, it might not, but the way we've adjusted this is to your floor. And what we're trying to accomplish, and I want you to hear and listen for the sounds of the locks. That's the important part. We want these to all fire at the same time. Just like that. You hear one click, and that means all 4 locks are engaged at that time. And then to lower this, you're going to hit your hydraulic release handle, and then that's going to come down and nest onto this lock, and it takes all the pressure off of our cables. And that's now on the load. Nothing, you can't pull on this handle to open up your locks. It's there until you raise the lift back up and disengage the locks. Best lock system on the market. Now that we have the locks all firing together, there's one more step you got to do. You'll want to load your car on it. Once you put that car on it, like I said a minute ago, it tightens the cables. That'll get you to where you're dialing in this lock. Because when you first put it on, you might not hear that same click that we just did. So put the car on it and then use the same formula. You're using this as your gauge, come up till it comes flush with the car on, and check each one of them. And then if you need to make a minor adjustment, you're going to tighten up the cables to make it to where they're flush, and they'll all fire together.